Ah, the French. What's not to love? Wine, cheese, revolutions, and often forgotten when it comes to popular nerd culture. The French might have the high art, but Japan and the North America has the weeb art. You've got the usual suspects, Tintin, the Smurfs, and my boys Asterix and Obelix, that keep the flag high and have produced high quality films and comics that you should definitely check out. I say that now because there is a high chance that you are a North American and you might have the gall to dismiss these icons of animation. This has nothing to do with the French Canadians except the language, but already I'm giving the French Canadians too much credit. But still, even some hard-boiled cartoon and animation connoisseurs might struggle to name more than that, and struggle to name animation legends coming from the master of the continent. Myself very much included. Unless you've been in certain internet circles, then you're probably feeling pretty smug duck right about now and see yourself above your peers. I'm of course talking about the topic of today's video, Wakfu, the animated series. But before we jump in, we should talk about the MMORPG it's based on, Dofus, and its sequel, Wakfu. Find out which came first, the game or the series. It was the game. It's no secret. Dofus and Wakfu are still available for you to try out and play. And if you're looking for a MMORPG with turn-based combat instead of the traditional tap targeting action, then you could do worse. Wakfu and Dofus have just been living under the shadow of a certain free-to-play MMORPG for years, and they've both lived under the shadow of World of Warcraft for decades. I think what speaks the most about Dofus and Wakfu's popularity outside of France is the fact that Josh Strife Hayes hasn't made a video about it. Still, Wakfu can pull some respectable numbers even after all these years. But you might consult the community on what server to roll unless you want to mingle with the French. Dofus was so successful, in fact, that when Wakfu the MMO was developed by Ankama Studio, they decided to have a cross-media experience and make a TV series to go along with. If you're experienced with World of Warcraft, then the word cross-media experience should ring some bells, since Blizzard has been doing that ever since the launch of vanilla World of Warcraft. Never a TV series though. There is also the Dofus TV series available based on the MMO, but I won't be talking about that. You read these old interviews with the people behind Wakfu, like Anthony Rue and Fabrice Ninzi, and you see them going, "Oh, we released this our little game to international audiences, hope you like it. Also, as a bonus, we are going to release this little TV series to go along with it. We made it in Flash, since that's what the cool kids like." Little did anyone know that they released one of the most enjoyable and engaging animated series, and it goes hard. Wakfu Season 1 still has one of my favorite villains from anything, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's take a look at Season 1 of Wakfu and see what the French have been cooking. Usually I leave this at the end, but you can watch Wakfu on Netflix, or if you're afraid of Netflix, like the sky is going to fall on top of you, then you can actually watch Wakfu on Ankama's own launcher. For a modest price, you get the access to all of the seasons, except Season 3 for some reason, and you can buy the webtoons as well. If you want to support Ankama, then I'd suggest that you try to support them here, the best you can. And I'm laying my cards on the table and say that Ankama gets more money when you watch it on their launcher rather than on Netflix. You can even watch the first 2 episodes for free, in French and in English subtitles of course. Anyway, spoilers for the first season and especially the ending. You've been warned. Our story follows Yuko, Ruel, Persedal, Evangeline and Amalia, who are trying to find the dragon, oh boy, Grundaloragran. Grundaloragran? Who I'll be referring as Grog from now on. There is no way I will keep pronouncing that name for the whole video. The story kicks off with the timely arrival of Ruel, Persedal, Evangeline and Amalia to the same vicinity as Hugo and his father Alibert's tavern, which after certain exchange raises the curiosity of our season 1 villain Nox. Nox is repelled, but Hugo's father takes the heavy hit and visibly ages, since Nox can manipulate time, which is one of the coolest abilities you can give to a character in fiction, only topped by powers related to gravity. The gang forms a brotherhood of tofu and sets out to an adventure to find Grog and uncover Hugo's past. Now you've been listening all of this and thought to yourself that this seems rather familiar, and yes, I'm here to tell you that Brotherhood of Tofu was heavily inspired by Avatar Fellowship of the Ring. I kid, but you might have heard Wakfu being compared to Avatar, The Last Airbender, and hopefully in a positive light. Still, the comparisons really end at Hugo's and Aang's backstories. Both are our main characters and are believed to be last of their kind, but outside of that and some superficial similarities, Wakfu is unique enough and stands on its own. Besides, you can't even really say that Hugo and Aang are that similar. I mean, look at Hugo. His father figure is still alive and well. You might have also noticed the animation, which is interesting. The show was made in Flash, which makes it the best Flash animation by default, outside of maybe this.
Sakarin villapaita peli. Pue Sakarille villapaita. Hi, kutittaa. Voitit pelin.
Anyway, while the animation can go hard at points, I'm also a bit confused about these side-scroll sections. I mean, they don't look bad, but they do look flat in comparison to any other scene, and I was taken back almost every time the animation decided to shift to that perspective. It didn't ruin it for me, but I did keep wondering if this was some sort of cost-cutting decision made by the studio. Now, what sets Wakfu apart is that, well, it's quite boring at parts, and quite generic for the first half. You've got Hugo, a chosen hero looking for his destiny, Persedal, hothead warrior literally battling with his demon, Amalia, a spoiled princess who is by far the worst part of the show till about halfway, when she finally gets another character trait outside of women beast shopping. Evangeline, the straight woman archer and handmaiden to Amalia, and Ruel, old greedy womanizer with a heart of gold. A rare example where it's almost charming and not cringe, like in my Chinese cartoons. There is also Adamai later in the series, who I would call a spirit animal of sorts, and that's honestly the best description for him, for now. The early episodes are hit and miss, and usually follow a fairy tale structure where a character learns a lesson and solves the conundrum of the day. You could call these early episodes world building and setting up the stakes, but I would honestly call most of it filler. Most egregious example is the football match that takes 3 whole episodes to settle, and I was checked out after the first. So why watch Wakfu at all? What is the emotional heart of the story that keeps you watching episode after episode?
Vous trouverez dans mon magasin des richesses que vous ne verrez nulle part ailleurs.
Ah, the French.
Would you believe that she is a fan favorite character? Wakfu, more like Waifu, am I right? Okay, but for real, what aspect keeps people coming back to Wakfu year after year? For me, to answer that, we need to talk about the best part of Wakfu Season 1, its main villain, Noximilian, or just Nox from now on. I'd say the story really picks up after episode 13, when we start shifting more frequently with our Brotherhood and Nox's POV. Every episode up until the end is worthwhile, outside of that Cannibal Island episode. Maybe Ankama should have thought about that bit harder. Nox has many strong points going for him, but I want to focus on two main ones. First of all, his motivations are morally grey, and not in the sense that his motivations are completely evil, but he is sexy. I guess he is sexy to someone. Is Nox a Tumblr sexy man? Leave a comment whether you think so. Nox wants to use Elia Cube to go back in time 200 years to correct his greatest mistake, and be with his family at the time of their need. To charge up Elia Cube with juice, also known as Wakfu, he needs to drain living beings' essence. This kills the being, since Nox essentially just sucks out their life force. But he justifies his rampant murder to himself and others, notably to Alibert. He gives him a big monologue while he is giving Alibert his youth back. He also mentions to Alibert that he would also do everything for Yuko. And if he could get away with it, wouldn't he do so? Indeed, this is one of the reasons why people who have watched Wakfu still think about Nox. He is a villain, yes, and his methods are insane and cruel, but he justifies it by saying that once he is finished, no one will know his crimes, and everyone he has slain or hurt will be brought back none the wiser. Nox still has some humanity left in him. Outside of healing Alibert, Nox keeps his family pet around to remind him of the better times. Still, I would argue that the mere act of doing heinous acts makes you irredeemable, and characters in the story do not know what we know and think he is completely insane. But you can see his motivations and can sympathize with him, while still condemning him. I guess Nox is the quintessential example for the saying, cool motive, still murder. Before we jump to the second main point, I want to highlight episode 17. Our heroes find Grog and Adamai in their deserted island, but unfortunately they also reveal the location to Nox as well. What follows is an absolutely amazing fight between Nox and Krugalorakran that outside of the ending is absolutely highlight for me. Even if you don't want to watch the entire season, then at least watch this fight scene. In the end, Nox wins, but it's a Pyrrhic victory. Grog hides his Wakfu and gives a monologue to our heroes and tells them to warn Amalia's people, Sadidas, that Nox is coming for their Tree of Life to finish his quest. What follows, actually what happens before Grog's warning, is this shot of Adamai that is both tragic and hilarious. I feel bad for him. What actually follows right after is that our party has to make it to Adamai's people and warn them and prepare defenses. While I could spend some time talking about the few episodes before the final clash, but I really want to move to the ending. If you've seen Wakfu Season 1, then you know what's coming, and most likely already guessed what was my second main point for Nox. The end of the series is the final showdown between Nox, Brotherhood of Tofu, and the good people of Sadamai. After many clashes and emotional moments, many of our heroes have fallen, and it has all come to this, a final clash between Nox, Yuko and Adamai, and then something amazing happens. Nox wins. He takes down Yuko and Adamai. He has killed Persedal and drained the Tree of Life, taking out the people of Sadamai, including Amalia. So it has all come to this. Nox has completed his scatter quest and finally has enough Wakfu to go back 200 years. So he uses the Elia Cube and goes back in time. Only to go back in time just 20 minutes. All these years, all these murders that he justified, all of it, for nothing. This is just enough time to bring back the Tree of Life and Yuko and Adamai back. But sadly, not enough for Persedal. This is the moment why people still talk about Wakfu. You throw the words 20 minutes to any discussion about the best villains ever, and all those familiar with Wakfu understand and agree. In the aftermath, Yuko is absolutely furious, grief-stricken and lashing out at Nox. But then he notices that Nox is crying, and arguably in greater pain than anyone else. The weight of everything he has done hits him, and it's all over for him. He can't reason his way out of this. He is unforgivable, and all those lives he took were for nothing. Nox is one of the greatest tragic villains in animation, and I would argue the biggest reason why Wakfu is still on people's mind today. Nox says his farewells to Yuko and departs from the battlefield. The last we see from him is his iconic mask and his fraps left in the dust at his family's grave. Wakfu Season 1 is worth watching, and what I remember from Season 2, the characters, the story and the beams were not that bad, but they never did reach the same heights as Season 1. I also seen the 2 of the standalone specials, Noximilian the Clockmaker and Ogress the Legend, and the OVAs that directly lead to Season 3. But I've never watched Season 3. Maybe it was because the future for Wakfu was never certain, and while the OVAs were fine, it took 5 years to go from Season 2 to Season 3, and I never had the interest to watch Season 3. Still, the gap from Season 3 to now airing Season 4 is even longer, clocking at 7 years. And what I can make out of from it, it seems that the series isn't that profitable for Ankama, and according to director Anthony Dutroux, the Season 5 will be completely in a webtoon format. So this is my call to action. If I pique your interest at all, then do support Ankama and get the series from their launcher. While Season 5 will be webtoon, then that is better than none at all, and maybe one day Ankama will adapt that webtoon in animation. Or, if you just bought 1 month of Netflix subscription to see the live-action Avatar The Last Airbender series and want to see something similar, then Wakfu is right there. If you want to see more French animation, then Asterix and Obelix animated movies such as The 12th Task of Asterix and Asterix and Cleopatra are worth seeking out. Thank you for watching, and next time we might look at a certain romance manga that just hit 100 chapters. Have a good time. Is Nox a tumble sex? Is Nox a tumble? Is Nox a tumble? 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 How the fuck do you say tumble?